What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Monty Python, and we're going to go to the Monty Python Instant Record Collection, one of a few that I got in more recent times, as opposed to the final ripoff, which was their final compilation right as they were breaking up, and which I had going back to my teen years. And as I mentioned, in the handful of releases that I've got in more recent times, there's a number of tracks, whether they are a skit, a monologue, or a song, that, as far as I know, I've never heard before. So this is one of those. And yes, as I said, it comes from the Instant Record Collection, and it's called Elephantoplasty, which is very funny, as many comedians have noted. The idea that cosmetic nasal surgery is referred to as rhinoplasty seems a bit of an amusement. The idea that someone's nose might be too big for their taste, so they'd like to get it shrunk or at least remodeled, to then compare them to a rhino, which has a massive horn in the place of a nose, seems a bit of cruelty. I think Seinfeld has a bit about that. So the idea of then extrapolating that and talking about elephantoplasty, the idea of refiguring someone's nose that is as big as an elephant's trunk, seems to take the concept to an even more absurd level. So I have no idea if that's actually the substance of the comedy here, and even if it is, no doubt it'll have twists and turns and elements that only Monty Python would do. But yes, that would be my estimation, is that we're talking about some form of cosmetic surgery here for the nose. Let's give it a listen. This is a track which, again, I don't know if it's a skit, a monologue, or a song, but it's called Elephantoplasty, and it's included in the, I think, compilation, the Instant Record Collection from Monty Python.
Tonight on Who Cares, we examine the frontiers of surgery, and with us is the international financier and surgeon, Reg Le Crisp, and his most successful patient to date, the elephant, Mr. George Humphreys. Mr. Le Crisp, the surgery on Mr. Humphreys is truly remarkable, but why an elephant?
Well, that was just a stroke of luck, really. An elephant's trunk became available after a road accident, and Mr. Humphreys happened to be walking past the hospital at the time.
And what was Mr. Humphreys' reaction to the transplant of the elephant's organs?
Surprise, at first, then later shock, and deep anger and resentment. But his family were marvellous. They helped pull him through.
How long was he in hospital?
Well, he spent the first 3 weeks in our intensive care unit, and then 8 weeks in the zoo.
I see. Is Mr. Humphreys now able to lead a fairly normal life?
No. Oh, no. No, he still has to wash himself in a rather special way. He can only eat buns, and he's not allowed on public transport. But I feel these are very minor problems. When you consider the very sophisticated surgery which Mr. Humphreys has undergone. I mean, each of those feet he's got now weighs more than his whole body did before the elephantoplasty, and the tusks...
Some years ago, you were the centre of a controversy, both from your own medical colleagues and from the church, when you grafted a pederast onto an Anglican bishop.
Well, that's the ignorance of the press, if I may say so. We've done thousands of similar operations. It's just that this time there was a bishop involved. I wish I could have more bishops.
Is lack of donors a problem?
There just aren't enough accidents. It's unethical and time-consuming to go out and cause them. So we're having to rely on whatever comes to hand. Chairs, tables, floor cleaning equipment, drying up racks, pieces of pottery, and these do pose almost insurmountable surgical problems. What I'm sitting on, in fact, is one of our more successful attempts. This is Mrs. Dudley. She had little hope of survival. She'd lost interest in life, but along came this very attractive mahogany frame, and now she's a jolly comfortable Chesterfield.
I see.
Oh, excuse me.
So presumably this surgeon, which I'll use scare quotes for that, is off to find whatever remnant of that road accident could be used to graft onto someone or to replace one of their actual organs. And yes, it's one that just cascades in absurdity, right? Like at first, and not as I predicted, we're not talking about humans, we're talking about an elephant named Mr. Humphreys, which is already amusing, that had a trunk grafted on or cosmetically replaced from his original trunk. And then we're talking about like side effects from the surgery, and like, well, you know, he can't bathe himself, which, you know, elephants use water to, like, you know, cast it onto themselves to bathe in rivers and so on. So it's still sort of like only one level of absurdity. But then we're talking about how his hooves like way more than before, and he's not allowed to go on public transport. So now we take it to like another level of absurdity. And then suddenly we're talking about grafting a pederast, which, you know, I'm not sure how deep to go into this, but it's the idea of someone who is an adult who is amorous toward a younger person, and it's a concept that I think, or a term that is used mainly toward like ancient understandings of sexuality, whereas like in modern times I think the word pedophile would be used. But yeah, so then suddenly we're talking about like church malfeasance and, you know, grafting a pederast onto a bishop, which then he says, oh, and this happens all the time, only this time it was done to a bishop, so maybe it gathered more controversy than typical incidents of that type. And then we're talking about grafting a mahogany frame onto someone, which makes her like a Chesterfield, which I assume that's a painter. And then, you know, once we've gotten to this like fourth level absurdity, we hear a crash outside and instantly footsteps go running toward the street. So yeah, again, it's classic Monty Python in multiple respects. It just keeps getting more and more absurd. It's like controversial, or like they don't shy away from addressing like controversial subjects in the context of absurdity and comedy. And it's another example of the way that I think Cleese and Chapman in particular just always have a good dynamic when they're involved in comedy together. I instantly think of that job interview sketch, as well as, of course, the Arthur and Black Knight sequence in Holy Grail. That's maybe their most famous, but again, there's so many. The Undertaker, another great example. So those two in conjunction always find a way to like have this absurdity but with a mock sincerity at the same time. So yeah, just another classic one that is so Monty Python from beginning to end. So yeah, let me know what you think of this one. I will see you next time. Peace.